Hello and welcome to the Booktopia podcast. I'm Olivia Fricot, Senior Content Producer at Booktopia, and joining me today is Ben Hunter, our Fiction Category Manager. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Olivia.
And our guest today is Jessie Tu, the author of A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing. Welcome, Jessie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming onto the show.
I'm excited.
Jessie,
hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. From what I understand of you, you've been writing from a very young age, and you've had a sort of varied career in which you've been a teacher and you're currently a journalist with Women's Agenda. You've written poetry, and now this is your debut novel. So what's drawn you to fiction?
I think at that moment in my life, like you said, I've been writing since I was like 5. So I learned English when I came to Australia at the age of 5. And as an ESL student, I was encouraged by my teacher to keep a journal every day. And so that habit, that routine was just ingrained in me since forever. And I think when I reached that age 2 years ago, I wanted to answer a question that was deeply personal in regards to a relationship I was in at that time. And I felt like I could only extricate myself in a specific way in which nonfiction, like I had historically only written nonfiction, and I felt really akin to that genre. There was something sort of deeply truthful about essay collections, particularly, that I felt drawn to. But then at that time in my life, I wanted to, like I said, dissociate myself from where I was at and make a character into this and into solving this narrative problem that I had in regards to what I was going through with a particular man, and I could only do that through fiction.
That's fascinating. Do you still have the diaries? Do you ever go back and read them?
Yeah, I do. It's such a sort of masturbatory thing, isn't it, to go back and read your own stuff? But I have to say, most of it is just really, really awfully intense teenage angst kind of thing. Like, most of it is like, oh, I hate my mother, I hate my father, I hate this guy who would never look at me. It was always just sort of so much anger. I think it was just a place for me to put all my anger and intense emotions, because I felt like I couldn't do that within my own family.
Fascinating. And you mentioned dissociation, which kind of straight away brings us to this character, your very interesting character of Jenna. Could you introduce our listeners to Jenna?
So Jenna is when we meet her at the beginning of the book, she's 22 years old. She was a violin prodigy, and she's now struggling to find herself back as a violinist. She's trying to struggle with her competing desires to make herself known in the classical music world. She had a breakdown in her teenage years, a very public meltdown, and she's trying to find her way back into that world of, elitism and prestige. But she's also now a young woman who has, for a lot of different reasons, found herself lacking in emotional substance, I guess. And what she tries to do is find validation and strength as a woman through having a lot of sex with men. And I guess that the narrative of Jenna throughout the book is her trying to come to terms with the limits of that single pursuit of power.
It's interesting that in that book, in your book, there's that conflation that I think a lot of young women go through, where they do conflate sexual power they do conflate sex with power, and not in ways that are usually very useful or healthy even. So it was interesting to kind of watch that unfold on the page in a way that was very, I will say, explicit, but also just not holding anything back and being a lot kind of realistic about the way that a lot of young women do experience sex. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I was conflicted about whether or not to put that in. When I wrote it, it was very much me pouring out all the messiness in my heart and in my head and in my soul, and I didn't there wasn't much self-scrutiny or self-judgment when it came to just the craft of writing what I wanted to write down on paper and what I felt was necessary to see on paper. A lot of the sort of sexual, explicit stuff that I'd read in novels throughout my life had been, I don't know, just it either was written by a white guy or like it was. I found a lot of strength from reading a lot of queer literature, like sex between same-sex couples was very, very enlightening for me. But I guess like I felt like I needed to do that in order to just, I don't know, like confront what I didn't want to shy away from, like things that were really confronting to me as a young woman. And I think I wanted to just see what that would look like on the page.
What interests me, I guess, is that this character of Jenna is having lots of sex, but it's, as you say, it's from a non-white male perspective that we as a reader are going at it. And what you've written is perhaps not the cliche story of a hero having lots of sex but missing out on that special capital L love and turning that around through a happy ending. You've written a young woman who's addicted to sex and is using that as a kind of shortcut to admiration from people who are dominant in her world. She isn't waiting for a white knight to sort of rescue her from a life of debauchery. She's searching for that, I think you used the word, validation after a lifetime of dislocation and abuse. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I think I would. I think what I really wanted to do was put inside a narrative this whole, like, I've been thinking about sex for like so long. Like I think what I wanted to do was write a novel where I can, like in my daily life, in my social life, I'm someone who's just deeply interested in sex, not because I'm a particularly like weird, creepy, prurient person, but because like I feel like as a society we're so overwhelmingly set on thinking about sex as this like athletic conception, but I feel as though our language around sex, I'm just talking about heterosexual sex in this context, it's just so narrow and it's so lacking. There's a kind of like a overwhelming poverty of language in the ways in which we describe relations between men and women, and like there's nothing like sex, like there's nothing as political and also involubly personal, when it comes to two people coming together and engaging in intercourse. And yet we don't have the sort of humane language to describe what happens like on a sort of politically when two people, like a man and a woman, come together. And I think what I was trying to do was sort of invite that into the public sphere, because like sex and loneliness are two such sort of remaining taboos in society that we don't talk about much. And I'm just like baffled. I'm really baffled as to why we still in 2020 feel we turn away or shy away from conversations that, like sex, sex is, it's incredibly powerful. Like it makes human beings, it destroys people, like I don't know why we don't have a sort of consistent yearning to explain the ethics and the politics of it.
Yeah, that's definitely something you've hit head on in this novel. Why have you chosen to in sort of exploring that concept and that great set of issues? When did the choice come along to make it all about this girl who is an incredibly talented musician and in a cutthroat world of classical music?
How did I decide that?
Yeah. I guess I find it really interesting that you kind of show us a parallel between this kind of white heteronormative domination in the bedroom and a white heteronormative domination in orchestras and music halls.
Yeah.
Where you've got this young woman who's dissociating from herself to sort of perform a role where she can't fully express herself, but she's expressing something that's very difficult, and it serves a purpose of white male aggrandizement at the end of the day when you put on the heels and the evening dress and you bring to life the incredibly difficult work of dead white guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Very concrete way you've drawn those two parallels together. It's precisely what it was. Yeah, I think that's what it felt like, this powerful notion that I think I wanted to really, I wanted to center a young woman who is always in this this sort of consistent perpetual state of want and kind of the destructive forces in which our society continues to create barriers around women who do want to pursue their life on their own terms. But like, I guess when it comes to sex and for women and also classical music, I feel like the classical music world, which I was like vehemently trying to penetrate into when I was a young person, it felt so alienating to me because I didn't look like anyone else. It was a very like wealthy world. It was so elitist, and like I felt like I always had to perform. Like I felt like there was always a veneer, sort of like layer of just like overwhelming sense of self-scrutiny that was required for people who engaged in classical music. It's almost like ballet as well. It's very high-end art, right? Where you are like for ballerinas, for instance, like the art of a beautiful ballerina is to obscure the pain that is involved, right? You have to make it look effortless. And I feel like, for me, I draw parallels to like sex or like pornography, where women, like guys grow up looking at porn and they think that women get off from being hurt. This idea that women like pain, so I think to explore those two notions of like what it means to be a woman and to perform for the male gaze.
And the music scene in Jen's eyes and through her ears is not the kind of place of reverence and joy and creativity that maybe the kind of mostly white patronage of that scene might think it to be. It's like all cutthroat competition and extreme elitism. And maybe you're drawing on, I guess, maybe a white person can achieve, can sort of like be there and be justified. Do you feel like you have to like when you were a young performer, do you have to like constantly sort of justify being there by being supremely good? I feel like that's totally what Jen is trying to do, right?
Yeah, precisely. And it's the thing, like with anyone who looks outside of what has been typical of that particular field, like say in the sciences, if you don't look like a white guy in a lab coat, you have to do so much more in order to set yourself up for, because people look at you more suspiciously. Like if you are someone who moves inside a body where, there's a precedence of people who look like you before you, then it's just people don't suspect you, or they don't you're not as suspicious as, say if you look like black or a Latino or Asian, or if you're transgender, or if you're, large, or if you're disabled, like all these identities of otherness. You have to go above and beyond to prove to people that you're eligible to be there just because you look different. Like if you are a white guy, for instance, and you want to be a judge, it's so much more easier for you than say an Asian woman, because I can't even off the top of my head, I don't even think I've ever seen an Asian judge in Australia, a female Asian judge. So like if I wanted to do that, then I would have to fight a lot of people's preconceived ideas of like, oh, why does she deserve to be there? Because she doesn't look like a typical judge.
And even it's just so ironic because there is that stereotype of, the brilliant Asian wonderkind, musical prodigy, you know what I mean? So there's that, like, I always remember, like, I used to play piano and people say, oh, like whenever an Asian kid would get up and perform, they'd say, oh, he's just robotic, he's just too good. And it's like, there's still those strange stories that we've constructed around, just performance. And
absolutely.
race.
Yeah.
It's just...
Oh no, I find that so viscerally insulting, because like when people, like, I remember whenever I said in the past, when people asked what instrument I played and I said violin, they would be like, oh yeah, I kind of knew that, because like you said, there's this like image of, you know, young alpha male Asian, also alpha type Asians, you know, children of so-called tiger parents who are, you know, either pianists or violinists. Like, I can count on one hand the number of like trumpet players who are Asian, or like I don't know, bassoon players maybe. Like, you know, like it just seems like Asian people reach for the hardest things because we want to prove ourselves, because we feel like we're ineligible to be participating in a white society. We have to stand out, and we reach for the hardest things, right? Like, people, like, I think it's general knowledge that the violin and the piano are kind of like technically the hardest instruments there is, at least in the Western world, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah, but do you guys know Encore? You know, the performance every year. Yeah. So the Encore is, like, for those who don't know, the best HSC performers of every year from high school. And I remember once a few years ago where I had a conversation with a white male teacher who kind of looked down the list of the program and saw like a lot of Asian names next to violin or piano, and he rolled his eyes and he said, "Oh, not another, like not again." Like, and he made a comment about the year after year there's these robotic, technically brilliant, perfect Asian players, but he was like, oh, they lack soul or spirit. And I find that deeply insulting and racist, because, you know, as Asians, we're not seen as individuals. We're just seen as robots, you know, and this is perpetuated through media and the film and, you know, TV. We're never given our own central narratives. We're always, you know, the side characters.
Yeah, definitely.
In the novel, there's also some brief forays into the visual art world, and there's this kind of parallel sort of white elitism there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I really wanted to do that. I think I didn't do that very subtly. maybe I did that very explicitly, like, because I feel like if I wasn't a writer, I would definitely be a visual artist. I like the visual art. Like, artists are people who like move through the world in the way I do, like, as in they ask questions about what it means to be a human being. And I feel like there is no better way to live, if you are privileged, to answer those questions and to ask better ways to, you know, describe the human condition in their own way. I feel like I really wanted to do that from, yet again, another Asian and female perspective. So it was important for me to have that extra Asian perspective, not just Jenna, but also Valerie.
Yeah, I really enjoy the different side characters in this novel. I wonder, do you see the same systemic issues of class, gender, race, ethnicity playing on the book scene now that you're publishing for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Like, I feel like it's changing, and it's promising, this change, but the speed is glacial, and it should never be. You know, like, if someone had asked me, like, do I still feel seen in, you know, in the Australian literary culture, I'd say, like, absolutely not. And just because we have a few, like, you know, Alice Pung, Ben Law, they're great people, but, you know, you would never ask, say, like, a white writer if they feel like, you know, just because there's one or two white writers out there, that is enough, you know. It's just like, we should never think in a way that where we can rest on our laurels, and you know, we've had equal distribution of attention to people of color, and there's always, I think, as a country, we can always do better.
Yes, yeah. There's a dark humor in this novel that is very focused on. It's really focused on Sydney as this kind of paradise city that's crushed by white privilege and money, and Jenna is fully aware of these kind of opposing forces of the south side and the north side of the city, and there's no conversation going on around Jenna without anyone who's over 30 starting to chat about real estate, and I found that very accurate. Your family came to Australia from Taiwan, as you said, when you were very little. And from your rather impressive bio. It seems like you've travelled a heck of a lot. Is Sydney a bit of a joke?
I feel like you're wanting me to say something controversial.
Go
on. Okay, yeah. Sydney is not a joke, but Sydney is like, I feel like Sydney is that really pretty girl in high school that is just pretty and that's it. Like she has no surface or depth, you know? I really think that. And she's so vacuous. Like I've always felt very alienated in Sydney because Sydney people are so I'm just speaking here specifically about the inner west and, you know, like the North Shore, like very, very wealthy areas. So I'll be very specific when I make these comments, but it's like a bunch of people who are so sheltered and buffered by their money from ever having to explore deeper, I guess, deeper ways of like questioning their place in the world, or like coming to terms with like maybe struggle or suffering that money literally just kind of buffers you against. And I feel like that comfort is something that I felt very isolating, like this sense of we're really happy next to the beach, you know, we can spend like $50 at brunch and, you know, not blink. I feel like comfort makes people dangerously, like, I think comfort is a dangerous place to be because you're not wanting to change the world. Like I'm someone who's constantly in a place of like anger and discomfort because the world really is a very effed up place, and I don't ever want to be comfortable because being comfortable means that I don't feel compelled to change things, and there was always things to change, you know.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sorry we're smashing through time, but I want to talk. You talked about the taboo of loneliness earlier, and I found that fascinating. I love the way you approach the idea of loneliness in this novel from a different perspective than which you would just normally sort of put it. That you can be incredibly, you know, talented and widely social, but being just crushingly lonely. And there's all this conversation, there's all this discourse going on around, I don't know, public health and medicine, and you just see article after article, and people talk about this kind of loneliness epidemic, which just seems to be phrased through just like a like white male perspective, and people are explaining it away by saying, well, we don't go to church anymore, or, you know, we don't go to Boy Scouts or have civic clubs. But through this novel, you're able to extrapolate like a much more perhaps serious reason for loneliness. I wonder. Are we just full of shit when we talk about loneliness?
No, I think all those reasons are legitimate, but your perspective on like the current rhetoric around it being centered and also voiced by straight white men, I agree with. I think what I am deeply interested in terms of loneliness is the shame associated with admitting it. Like it's almost like repellent when someone says I'm lonely. Like where you can go out and say I'm so sex starved and people will not judge you. Whereas like if you go out and say I'm so lonely, people will like think you are diseased or something, you know? And I find that fascinating. I find that so fascinating that we are so unwilling as a society and also individually with our friends to admit loneliness. And I really wanted to kind of drill into that shame. And I guess it's because like I've always grown like I guess I'm still struggling through that and negotiating that with my own mind, but like this sense of like shame and what it can do to you, I find that like endlessly fascinating because, you know, when I think this idea of shame I've grown up with because of my parents, I guess. My parents were deeply conservative Asian migrants, and in Asian culture, I know at least in Taiwan, shame is used as a societal sort of tool in order to keep people down and keep people not not kind of spinning away from the standard trajectory of like finding a mate when you're 25, getting married, having children, buying a house, staying at a job for 50 years and then dying. Like I feel like shame and the way in which shame is operated by, within governments in Asian countries is still like laceratingly powerful. And I think a lot of people in Australia, perhaps, white people who don't have many people of color friends, they don't know that we're always struggling with this residue of shame that's been carried on from our parents. And I think that's what I was fascinated in trying to interrogate in this novel.
Yeah, it's also that and the conflation of loneliness with romance and also sex that I find really interesting, that shame finds expression in Jenna's sexual behavior.
Yeah.
I just think it's an interesting thing about our society that we usually only think of loneliness in terms of I have no one like to date, I have no boyfriend, no girlfriend, no part. But whereas this book kind of shows that you can have many partners and be physically with people, but you can still be just so profoundly lonely.
Yeah.
It's kind of confronting to read.
Oh, yeah. I think, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that lately in the last couple of years as well. Like, and I think social media and technology have a lot to say about this and have a lot to contribute in this epidemic, like you said, Ben, in regards to like especially young millennials feeling like disabled and paralyzed by loneliness. It's because, you hop onto Instagram, you can see like beautiful women and men living extraordinarily beautiful lives, and it's just like it's a recipe for like hating on yourself and hating on your life. And like I often think about what it was like to live in the world 100 years ago and how perhaps I wouldn't feel so lonely because my relationships might have been richer because I didn't have Instagram or Facebook, and the people I would meet, I would have deep, long conversations with, without the distraction of phones in front of us. I feel that as though our attention, like I worry about the next generation and us, I guess, even, people today. I worry for the ways in which our mind is going to change in generations to come because of technology and because we have our attention fragmented and disabled so like momentarily and easily by technology. And I feel like that is, I don't know, I just feel like our sense of wanting more, is just inextricably linked to what social media pounds onto us every day.
Yeah, and perhaps there's a constant pressure to curate yourself in a way that is socially and politically desirable.
I know, I hate that. Like I deeply hate being online. It makes me deeply uncomfortable. Like having an Instagram page and stuff. Like I really despise that because I don't want to have to perform. Like you said, it's completely curated.
Yeah, and I just, I've got one, but like I'll look at something and be like, oh, that's really cool. I'll take a photo of that and put it on my thing for my friends. But then I'm like, oh well. And then I think, oh, well, how will my friends view that in context of the other ones? I'm like, why am I privileged to take a photo of this? And why haven't I been talking about X, Y, and Z? And I just feel ashamed and then just go into a corner and just turn the phone off.
Oh, that's
just
sad.
Like my own. I guess that's just like we have to get past that. Do you like you describe classical music so vividly, accurately to my amateur eyes? Do you enjoy classical music? Do you go to concerts? Is it something is that something that's a big part of your life, or has this just like been forensically researched for this novel?
Classical music used to be a big love of mine because it was a forced love, I'd say. Like when you grow up thinking that is the way to be validated, you are like, I feel like I was subconsciously desiring something because it was required of me to desire that one thing. And so I listened to classical music for years on end. I went to classical music concerts ferociously, like consistently. And I think now I've come to a place where I still have this deep, very deep conflicting desire. Very conflicting sort of thoughts about it, in the way that I'm deeply conflicted when I see like Woody Allen films, because, you know, everyone knows about Woody Allen, but yet I still fucking love his films, you know? And I feel like classical music, like I wouldn't say I listen to it that much these days. I have about 10 pieces, mostly piano pieces actually, that I would say when I listen to it, I literally die, because they are so overwhelmingly like perfect in their execution. And when you hear it, you feel like you're a better human being. But besides those 10, I wouldn't like go to the opera. I wouldn't go spend my money on like a concert with music I'm not familiar with, because it doesn't speak to me. It doesn't speak that language to me. I feel like I usually only listen to jazz, because I feel like that speaks to me. Jazz is so much more liberating to my mind and to my like ears, I guess.
Right. And have you ever performed as a jazz player?
Oh no, I haven't. It's too hard.
That's a whole other journey you've got to go on, Ben.
Yeah.
I live with a music teacher, and she's like, if I'd become a jazz musician, you'd have to devote your entire life, and every second you're listening to something, it should be jazz. And it's just like, it's more than just technique, it's way of life, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I just wonder if you can derive pure joy from it because you've never even had a sort of a hand in that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe that is what it is. Yeah.
Will you write fiction again? What are you working on next?
Oh, I'm working on my second novel, which is so super exciting.
Great. Tell us about it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's actually about a group of classical musicians again, which is so funny. Like, I feel like maybe I've spent years in therapy trying to think things through, but maybe this is just like another thing where I'm trying to extricate some sort of conflicting emotion I have around classical musicians and what they represent to me. But I guess it's just it's a book about a woman who falls in love with a classical musician. Like, it's centered from an Asian perspective again, but it's nothing like Jenna. It's not in first person. It's in third person, but it's just about my gaze. Like, I'm trying to center my gaze, because I feel like my whole life up until maybe 12 months ago, I've only read books written by white people, and especially straight people, and especially male straight white people. And like, I've come to like think like them, and I'm horrified in the ways in which the way I see the world is very much from their lens, and it's not through my own lens. And so I think this book is just trying to establish my own view of the world and how I see white people.
Fantastic. I love the way you're using the sense of inquiry of fiction is so deeply set in how you work. I just think that's awesome. And I can't wait to read it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks.
This book has got a huge reaction already, and it's everyone's saying this bold, exciting new voice has arrived, and I'm very excited to see how it's going to be received. And I'm super excited to be selling it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It was really great to chat.
Yeah, I think this has been such an interesting chat. And for all our listeners at home, if you'd like to grab your copy of A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing, you can buy it from booktopia.com.au or from your local bookstore. And thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Booktopia podcast channel. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on Soundcloud and iTunes for free, and get access to hundreds of author discussions, book analysis pieces, and more. Or, if your eyes need a workout, head to Booktopia TV on YouTube. Don't forget, for all books featured in this podcast, and for access to a whole bunch of other fun content on our blog, head to Booktopia, Australia's local bookstore, at booktopia.com.au. www.booktopia.com.au.